In 1929, inside the dusty archives of the Topkapi Palace in Istanbul, a librarian reached for a bundle of old maps and pulled out a fragment of gazelle skin parchment that would change history forever. It was a map dated 1513, signed by a Turkish admiral named Piri Reis. But there is a massive, terrifying problem that modern geographers still cannot explain. On the bottom edge of this map, it shows the coastline of Antarctica. Not the ice-covered Antarctica we know today, but the land underneath the ice, with rivers, mountains, and bays mapped with surgical precision. The official history books say Antarctica was not even discovered until 1820. They say it has been covered in a mile-thick layer of ice for at least 6,000 years. So how did a Turkish admiral in the 16th century have a map showing the continent completely ice-free? Who flew over the planet at the end of the last ice age and drew this? Today, we're opening the forbidden archives. We're looking at 8 ancient maps that prove everything you were taught about human history is a lie. Stick with me, because by the time we reach the 8th map, you will realize that we are not the first advanced civilization to call this planet home. Let us look closer at this 1513 parchment. Piri Reis was not just a sailor, he was a collector. He wrote a note on the margin saying he did not draw this map from his own travels. He compiled it from 20 older source maps, some of which he claimed dated back to the time of Alexander the Great. Now, focus on the Queen Maud Land region of Antarctica. In the 1950s, the U.S. Air Force used seismic sounding to map the sub-glacial topography of that area. They wanted to know what the land looked like under the ice. When they compared the Air Force data to the Piri Reis map, they found a near-perfect match. The coastline shown on the map has been buried under ice for millennia. To map it, you would need deep-sea sounding equipment, or you would have had to be there before the ice arrived. Professor Charles Hapgood sent this data to the 8th Reconnaissance Technical Squadron of the Strategic Air Command. Their response was that they had no idea how this map could be reconciled with the geographical state of 1513. If the map is real and the parchment has been carbon dated, it means someone was mapping the globe with advanced technology before the rise of ancient Egypt. It suggests a master map existed in antiquity, a ghost atlas from a civilization that disappeared during the Great Catastrophe. If Piri Reis was an isolated case, we could call it a lucky guess, but it is not. In 1531, a French mathematician named Oronteus Finaeus released a world map, and what he showed was even more detailed. He did not just show the coast of Antarctica, he showed the interior. He drew mountain ranges that remained undiscovered until the 20th century. He drew rivers flowing where there are now only glaciers. Modern core samples from the Ross Sea show that these rivers were indeed flowing about 6,000 years ago, exactly where Finaeus placed them. But history says 6,000 years ago, humans were just starting to build basic mud brick huts in Mesopotamia. They were not sailing to the South Pole. They were not measuring longitude with high-level mathematics. The precision of these maps requires spherical trigonometry. It requires an understanding of the Earth curve that supposedly did not exist until the 1700s. Every time we look at these lines, we are staring at a footprint of a lost mother civilization, a civilization that knew the world better than we did until the satellite era. In 1559, another map appeared in Turkey, created by Haji Ahmed. This one is perhaps the most haunting. At first glance, it looks like a standard, slightly distorted world map, but look at the area between Siberia and Alaska. Today, they are separated by the Bering Strait, over 50 miles of cold, deep water. On the Haji Ahmed map, there is no water. Instead, there is a massive land bridge connecting Asia to North America. Geologically, that land bridge, Beringia, did exist, but it was swallowed by the rising oceans at the end of the last ice age, roughly 10,000 to 12,000 years ago.
How did a 16th-century mapmaker know the exact shape of a landmass that has been underwater for 10 millennia? Is it possible that these maps are not just old? Is it possible they are surviving fragments of a global library that existed before the Great Flood? A library that was burned, lost, or hidden to keep us in the dark about our true origins. Now we move north. Most people think of Greenland as a massive, solid continent of ice, and on almost every map in history, that is how it is drawn, except for the Zeno map, published in 1380. The Zeno map shows Greenland not as one solid landmass, but as 3 large islands separated by narrow straits. For centuries, people laughed at this. They called it a mistake, a fantasy, until the 1950s. During the French polar expedition, scientists used sonar to look through the 2-mile-thick Greenland ice sheet. What did they find? Greenland is not a solid continent. It's actually a cluster of 3 islands held together only by the massive weight of the ice. The Zeno map was right, but it was drawn 500 years before we had the technology to see through ice. This means someone saw Greenland when the ice was gone. Someone walked those straits. Someone recorded the geography of the North Pole before the Big Freeze. We have looked at the coastlines, we have looked at the ice-free poles, but the mystery is about to get much deeper. As we move into the second half of our journey, we're going to look at maps that don't just show lost land, they show lost empires. We'll look at a Chinese map that suggests the New World was colonized long before the West existed. And finally, we'll look at the forbidden map of Mercator, the man who gave us our modern view of the world, and the secret continent he placed at the center of the North Pole that since has been scrubbed from every satellite image you see today. Why are they hiding the center of the world? And what happened to the civilization that drew the original blueprints of our planet? The real story starts now.
Welcome back. We've seen the impossible coastlines of Antarctica and the hidden islands of Greenland, but now we must go even deeper into the archives. If the first 4 maps proved that someone was watching the Earth from above during the Ice Age, the next 4 will prove that our entire timeline of discovery is a carefully constructed myth. Let's look at the 5th map, the 1418 Chinese World Chart. Officially discovered in a bookstore in 2001, this map claims to be a copy of an original from the era of Admiral Zheng He. It clearly shows the outlines of both North and South America, including the California coast and the Andes Mountains. This was nearly a century before Columbus set sail. But it's not just about who got there first, it's about how they knew the scale of the Earth. The map includes the correct longitudinal positions for the Americas, a feat of navigation that Westerners didn't master until the invention of the marine chronometer in the 18th century. Was there a global network of trade and exploration that was wiped out by a sudden shift in world powers, or perhaps something more cataclysmic? This leads us to the 6th map, created by the monk Fra Mauro in 1450. At first glance, it looks upside down because south is at the top, but look closer at the detail. Fra Mauro never left his monastery in Venice, yet he drew the southern tip of Africa with incredible accuracy, decades before the Portuguese supposedly discovered the Cape of Good Hope. He wrote in the margins that he spoke to travelers who had sailed these dark waters in massive ships. This map suggests that the knowledge of the world's true shape was already circulating in secret circles, hidden from the public eye, to protect the monopolies of the royal courts. But even Fra Mauro's map pales in comparison to the 7th map, the Mercator map of the Arctic. Gerardus Mercator is the father of modern cartography. Every time you open Google Maps, you are looking at his projection. But in 1595, he published a map of the North Pole that looks like something out of a fantasy novel. In the center of the Arctic, where we are told there is only floating sea ice, Mercator drew 4 massive islands separated by 4 inward-flowing rivers, meeting at a giant black mountain called the Rupus Nigra.
He described this place as the magnetic center of the world. For centuries, this was dismissed as a legend. But why would the most accurate mapmaker in human history suddenly decide to invent a continent? Some researchers believe the Rupus nigra was a real geological feature that either sank during a tectonic shift or is being intentionally hidden from modern satellite imagery for reasons we can only guess. Was this the fabled Hyperborea, the cradle of all human civilization? Finally, we reach our 8th map, the Vinland map. This is the most controversial piece of parchment in the world. It shows a large island west of Greenland, labeled Vinelanda, proving the Vikings had mapped North America 500 years before Columbus. For decades, the mainstream scientific community has tried to label this map a forgery. Every time a test proves the ink is ancient, a new study emerges to debunk it. It's a tug of war over the truth. Why is there such a desperate effort to keep this map out of the history books? Because if the Vinland map is real, it confirms that history is not a straight line of progress. It's a cycle of peaks and valleys. It means that we are not the first globalized society. We are just the latest. When you look at all 8 of these maps together, a terrifyingly clear picture begins to emerge. We see a world that was mapped, measured, and mastered by a civilization that predates our oldest records. A civilization that saw the Earth without its ice, that navigated the Bering Strait when it was still a bridge, and that knew the secrets of the poles. They left us these blueprints, these ghosts of a forgotten world, hoping we would one day be smart enough to read them. But as we've seen, the official version of history is a fragile thing, and it cannot survive the truth these maps reveal. The question is no longer whether a lost advanced civilization existed. The question is, what happened to them? And if they could vanish so completely, leaving only a few scraps of parchment behind, what does that say about our own future? Perhaps the most dangerous thing about these maps isn't what they show us about the past, but what they warn us about the fragility of our own world. We are walking on the ruins of giants, using their maps to find our way, while pretending we were the ones who drew them. The next time you look at a map, ask yourself, what else is missing, and who decided you weren't supposed to see it? If you're ready to see the evidence of the catastrophes that wiped these mapmakers off the face of the Earth, you need to watch our breakdown of the 8 catastrophes that changed history. The evidence is all around us, if only we have the courage to look. Stay curious, because the past is much closer than they want you to believe. Don't forget to tell me in the comments which map you think is the most undeniable proof of a lost world. See you in the next one.